I'm going to turn it over to Eli. He's the lead engineer at Innovu, and today he's going to be talking to you about sleuthing for metadata, unpacking 3 file formats. Take it away, Eli.
Good morning, everyone. Thank you for joining this talk, and let's dive in. So I'm going to go ahead and share my screen. Let's do the entire screen. All righty. Just ignore that trip to infinity. So I'm going to give a quick outline of what I'm going to talk about so you have an idea of what's ahead and the general contour. So I'm going to do some just introduction bits, a little bit more about myself, and then I'm going to be using questions for these particular file formats, and we're going to explore them using the command line more interactively. And then the 3 document types are Microsoft Office documents, PDFs, images. And then after going through each of those sections, we'll have a kind of bit of a reflection, just what are other questions we could ask, what are other things you could build, or further details. And then as well as a nice healthy buffer for questions so we can adapt the talk to our needs, if you will. And so, yeah, who am I? As Court mentioned, I work for a company called Innovu. We build a data analytics platform as a service, and I'm the team lead, and we, go on. So those are kind of the basic details, but this is a dumpster, as you can tell. Growing up, I lived in an apartment complex, and my brothers and I would explore this apartment complex, and we would often end up near these random sections with dumpsters, and we would go exploring in the dumpsters. And we would find various things. We weren't looking for food, but we were looking for gadgets and other things. And a few times we found nice bags of toys that people, to our shock, had thrown away. I liked doing that, and maybe to a degree I haven't changed. I still like doing this, but I just do this in different ways. And what I like to think of what we're doing today is we're digital dumpster diving. I learned later in life that dumpster diving is an actual term. It has a whole Wikipedia page. People do this professionally. Why might you care? I'm sure you have your own reasons. These are some of the pitch reasons I would give. Is I think this is a topic that has privacy and security implications. So you may be publishing a document or using software to publish a document that potentially leaks your identity without making it clear that that's what it's doing as part of its helpful features. Secondly, this is a great example of reverse engineering, and any piece of software was created by people, at least for now. And then because of that, we can look at it and understand aspects of it. We can do engineering in the reverse, or look at an artifact that a piece of software produced and look for clues, or use other software to kind of step back maybe how it was created. And then lastly, we're going to explore some command line goodies. These are tools that I've found that are helpful for interactively exploring some of these file formats, as well as the concepts or just general practices of maybe what you've heard is called Unix programming. The shell is incredibly powerful, but like many power tools, it can be overwhelming, or there can be too much information at first, which negates the usability or how much usefulness you'll find. And so if you want to follow along, or if you want to just grab the repo, I posted the link in the chat. This is also the just clone URL for HTTPS. Let's dive in. So the first kind of document I want to talk about is Microsoft Office documents. And these are ubiquitous, and what they are is an archive of XML files. XML being a markup language that's maybe not as popular now, but it's still everywhere. And what's interesting with Microsoft Office documents is the modern standard has tons of XML files, and all you need to do is unzip it, and then you can start kind of exploring. And so that's what we're going to do using 2 tools: Unzip, which is a basic Unix utility, and then New Shell, which is a project newer project that has some of the best ideas from, say, PowerShell on Windows, but also the kind of Unix philosophy of pipes. And I've just found it really helpful for interacting with the actual document without having to do, custom programming, if you will. And so the first question I wanted to explore when it came to a document is, who wrote this document? It's kind of a basic question. Oftentimes these documents are going to be published as with an author, but in our case, let's just start with this question. So click over to iTerm. And so in the repo, if you have it checked out or if you don't, you're going to see there's a files directory. And this is where I've kind of selected a few assets beforehand. So what I'm going to do is create a directory that we can use to explore this. I'm going to awkwardly stop talking because I cannot multitask when I do this. So, but the first step is I'm going to grab this file into another directory just for clarity, so we can easily see kind of what's going on. And so the tool that I'm using is unzip, which you'll notice by itself, it's telling me I can't actually grab that file, even though I know it's there. So what I end up doing is usually just a little workaround, because I know this is a zip archive if it's a valid Word document. And sure enough, I can pass it to unzip, and it just does that. And unzip helpfully prints out a few of these pieces that are composing the document. And there's a whole specification behind this. But again, I'm not giving a lecture on the specification, and don't worry, because it's a document that's 9,000 pages long, light reading. Instead, let's check out some of the files in doc props. So specifically, let's check out core. You can see it's pretty gnarly. There's a lot of stuff there. I'm not terribly interested in seeing what's in there. And so I think what we're going to do now is just switch over to the new shell. And again, this is just going to give us a little bit better way of exploring this structure without having to do custom programming ourselves. So you'll notice I'm opening it so I've entered into the new shell from my other shell, and I'm opening this up, and it's giving me some properties that I can actually use to explore. And so I'm just going to kind of interactively build. You can see my shell's already auto-completing, but I just kind of want to show this example of how you can kind of just start traversing the XML structure without necessarily having all these auxiliary tools. And so inside of the doc props folder in a Word document, there's a core XML file, and it has a tree of different keywords. And so as you can tell, we're just grabbing this specific property, and then we're looking at what's inside it. And there is some kind of nesting structure. And here, these are pretty clear. So we've got title, subject, keywords, description, created. And so in this case, let's check out the creator. And the way you do that is just by using dot notation. In this case, there's you can see there's a lot going on. And so sure enough, the creator is listed as me, even though I created this document using Microsoft Office's online web application, and it's not necessarily clear that it's actually encoding your username, or actually it's not even your username, it's your name. So it's not something I was interested in sharing necessarily, especially if this was a manifesto meant to be anonymous. You can also see there was another property called last modified, and that's also divulging or encoding whoever last modified this document, presumably. And so this is a kind of rough example. If you want to look at the actual commands that I listed there is a folder called snippets in the repository. So if I go, I've checked this out to public sleuthing for metadata, And in here, there's files that would be of interest would be our docx, who, and then we'll also jump on to the next thing, looking at when this document was created. So the next bit here is just kind of the same idea. So we looked at the creator last modified by, and if we go back, we can explore what are the other keywords. And so in this case, we can grab, I'm just going to do this because I'm tired of that tab completion. Let's do our created, and I'm going to clear my terminal, and created and modified as well. So they also have, all right. So you can tell they were, I created it one day and modified it the next. I think I rewrote the text. So lots there. We can explore. There's the content of the document, but again, we're exploring metadata, and we're just concerned with what's the data about the data, what's here. And you might be familiar with LibreOffice as well, and both Office documents and Microsoft Office documents and LibreOffice documents are similar. They're an archive of XML files and the assets embedded. That could be HTML or images or styles for how the fonts display, or fonts themselves. There's a competing specification for LibreOffice documents, but the same strategy we used here, you could use with a LibreOffice document. So the next topic is PDFs, or portable document formats. I have used these a lot. They're everywhere. Any kind of businessy software, I feel like, gives you some PDF because you have this guarantee that it's not going to change and that it's a relatively static format. Yet the specification created by Adobe actually allows JavaScript, which was pretty surprising to me because, again, I've always assumed that these documents are simply static and aren't going to do anything. And I stumbled across this individual's blog, Didier Stevens, and he blogs a lot about malware analysis. And so I'm going to use a couple of his Python tools because they're pretty simple, or they're just prototypes. And they, I think, have an interesting, simple way of just kind of showing you maybe how to start peeking under the hood of an actual PDF document. And so the first question that I have about a PDF document is, what does it contain automatic behavior? And JavaScript is scripting language programming, and we'll get to that as a second question. But what I learned investigating this for the talk is that part of how PDFs are malicious in some cases is they have automatic actions, which are these instructions inside of a PDF that say open a web browser or do something whenever the user saves it. Like these kind of things which you as the user may not realize, and that maybe at one point somebody said, hey, wouldn't it be wonderful if we did this for the user to be helpful? And yet people who don't want to be helpful are using those same things. And so the way we're going to look at that is we're going to go back to public. So we should note that the PDF tools are not versioned. And so you'll need to, if you're following along, or if you follow along later, you'll need to actually grab those from that blog post. And this is in the how-to guides. I'll just note this real quick. In the Sleuthing for Metadata how-to guides, there's installing tools markdown, and that explains sort of a lot of the assumptions that the software tools that I expected you to have installed and whatnot. So that has the link to the PDF tools. And so I, in advance, had created another directory where I downloaded the zip file from Didier's blog with his various pieces. And so what I'm going to do here is one of these tools is called PDF Parser. Again, it's just a standalone Python script. And you should know this is Python 2.x. So if you have Python 3 on your system, I don't know if this would work. But nonetheless, you can just follow along. So what we're gonna check out is using this PDF parser to search for an object, and that's the parlance for what kinds of instructions or how this document is composed. And so without, again, jumping into Adobe's specification for PDFs, we also can use a tool like this to sort of inductively learn about what the structure is. So we're going to do search. Actually, I'm going to pull this up here. Search action, and you'll notice we'll have to use this / notation. And we're going to go to public sleuthing for metadata files. And I again created in advance in the files directory of our repository a file called hello PDF. And so this is our canned example. But what we're going to do is look for an action, and sure enough, there is an action, and this tool kind of gives us a printout of the type and then JavaScript. And so that kind of leads to the second question is, well, does it contain JavaScript? And reading around most malicious PDF documents, according to, I think, the author of a more advanced PDF and malware analysis tool, said that it's going to have actions and JavaScript. So they often travel together, if you will, when it comes to being malicious or trying to do something that you wouldn't want it to do. And so similarly, we can actually just search for JavaScript as the instruction. So this is a kind of like a fuzzy search. You can look for different pieces of this. And so in this case, I should also note that real PDFs that are malicious often encode the word JavaScript differently. So this example was contrived. I just created this to make it easy and make me look like I know what I'm doing on this talk. But in the wild, there's other aspects of the specification for portable documents that allow you to encode parts of this document differently. And what I mean by that is the character encoding. So you could actually have a PDF that has malicious JavaScript or has some kind of weird behavior, but it doesn't say JavaScript. It would say like J and then $$ something, other encoding characters, and that would be just as valid. And the last bit I want to emphasize here is, will this always execute? So what I did is I created that, and we can see it says JS hello world. Presumably that's going to say something like hello world, but if I open this file, so I'm going to quit out of my shell because I actually don't want to open it using the new shell. I want to use a utility on Mac called open, which would delegate to the preview application on Mac. And so here, unfortunately, we don't get any pop-up that says hello world. And that really brings me to the close of talking about the PDFs and their structure when it comes to, say, malicious behavior or JavaScript, is that it's all dependent on the viewer, on your client opening this file. And so Mac OS has its own preview application, which has implemented enough of the specification to be able to, look through this. That's great. From what I read, most examples of malicious behavior were actually in older versions of Adobe Acrobat, so maybe typically on a Windows environment. So just something to know, if you are curious about the malicious PDFs and how that actually works, like how it would actually execute or what kinds of things you might be able to do if you encoded maybe not just a simple hello message, but like an action, open a web browser, navigate to this URL, that sort of thing. And the last section last kinds of documents that I wanted to explore on this talk were images, so digital images. And there's a fantastic utility, which we're going to kind of end our discussion on, which is EXIF tool. And so I've linked to this again. I've already installed it on my system, so I'll kind of cheat and be able to work ahead. But it's a utility written in Perl for extracting and modifying EXIF data. Or EXIF metadata, rather. And EXIF is another format that is XML, and it encodes various details about images and even other documents. And so with images, it'll encode many of the details around what kind of camera, what kind of shutter stop, like those sorts of details that are pertinent if you're interested in photography or if you kind of want to analyze that. And so what we're going to do again is just more inductively, the one question I had is like, what device took this picture? And so there's a couple ways to like explore this. I mean, in our case, again, we'll jump back into our terminal. And I'm going to go back into the public folder where I've cloned this repository, and I'm going to look at one of the snippets. And what we're going to do is look at a couple of these things combined. And so this one's, we're going to do this a little bit differently. And I'll just go ahead and grab these first couple lines. So this one I thought was kind of fun. So actually, I submitted my headshot because I spoke last year, but I was curious, I didn't even think about maybe when I took that picture or what I took it with. And so what I'm going to do is just use that same photo. And we're going to look at to see what we can find. And so this is actually, if you go to CPOSC's website, this is the picture of myself. Please don't just go to the site to look at that. But just, I chose this as an aside because I have consent. I don't care if you look at this photo and try to divine like what sort of metadata it has. Whereas like other documents, if people don't know you're digging in it and it is potentially divulging, I think that's an ethical issue that you should contact them and get consent before you do anything. But anyways, so the structure of EXIF tool is that we can point it at a file and then run it, and it'll just print out a ton of different pieces of information. As you can see, like there is a lot here. And so to answer our question is what device took this picture, I'm looking for these two fields called make and model. So if I do EXIF tool dash and then the name of a tag, we can see what it might have. And so I think here it's make and let's see model, or if it was, yeah. So in this case, this JPEG that I passed on to CPOSC's team at some point last year has this metadata by default. And it has it by default because, well, okay, what device took this picture? It looks like a Canon camera, EOS Digital Rebel. So my camera actually encoded this information into the image because I can tell you I took that picture myself and didn't consider that, there's all this other information that's being stored here. And so kind of with that, like we can look at maybe when the picture was taken. And so again, if we do EXIF tool and just kind of grab the whole output, let's maybe look for something like created. And I'm using a filter called ripgrep. It's like a version of grep just to simplify the output here. So it looks like we could look at something like create date. There's also a couple different fields. So it looks like they split it out by a timestamp versus a create date. So anyways, let's just try grabbing that. And I think you want to use a sort of camel case notation for these. Maybe try it if you don't have to. But the point here is again, similar. Yeah, so it looks like you have to use maybe a camel case version. EXIF's man page / the website has great documentation, so you can definitely dig into that to see maybe more of those details. And so we can tell that another tag, we can see when it was created. And lastly, with these, we can look at combining these questions and maybe telling a story. So in this case, in Sleuthing for Metadata, the snippets, there's image story. And it's just a simple shell script that combines a couple of these and into a string, and it just says on blank, some timestamp, somebody took this photograph with a Canon EOS digital. And again, that script, it's in the repo, but it uses another feature of EXIF tool that lets us create a template, if you will, and then substitute various of the XML tags that, or the EXIF tags that are embedded in this image. And so another question we can kind of ask is, with images, is where was this picture taken? And this is one I would encourage you to explore using a device that you have, or if you have access to images that have GPS encoded, because I have all these privacy settings on my iOS device, so I couldn't actually see any of the GPS positioning, which I guess is great because you can actually verify if it has that data in it. And so in this case, I believe what we need to do if we want to look at whether or not this file has GPS metadata is you can prefix the EXIF tool to search for let's go files. You could search for a class of tags. And so in this case, I believe the GPS filter might give us that. So actually it looks like let's do GPS. Yeah, so that is not the one that I was thinking of. So we're just gonna pipe this to see if we can figure out. Yeah, so it looks like this one. Okay, this is the tag. So actually, I was slightly wrong there. There's possibly a category that we could use, but in this case, this file has a single tag related to that, which we can just remove the spaces, it looks like, and search for it. So in this case, it says it's unknown, and that's only the altitude reference, so which presume would be like how high above sea level you are. But anyways, that's just something that you could further explore, grabbing what tags are in an image and then seeing maybe which ones might divulge more information about where the photo was taken, perhaps the coordinates. And then as kind of a bonus, you can use EXIF tool to parse PDFs as well, the EXIF data or others. Standard metadata, which is another specification, XMP. And so in this case, I grabbed another format or another PDF. So in files, there's, let's see here. Yeah, it looks like there's another one. And if we just do EXIF tool on here, we can see there's a couple of other tags that might be of interest to us, which are the creator and then the producer. Another thing like page count, which might be kind of interesting. But here again, I just kind of combine this into, let's look at maybe using that template feature -p and then a string to say, hey, on this time or date and time someone created this document with, and then that's combining the producer and the creator fields, which you can see here. So those are, another couple examples. Again, we can look at the author keyword as well. And in this case, these ones are, I grabbed them from another open source repository, so they aren't necessarily embedding this from an actual document producer, but I did take a couple examples off files that I found on, say, a public government site where there's maybe departments publishing documents, but they did actually like encode whoever's user, the user that created it, which my guess is something like what we saw with our metadata manifesto at the beginning, is that there's details that are maybe being encoded in there that I didn't expect. So again, we kind of went through that, but otherwise the question here is, well, oh, great, you can explore, you can extract, but what's the point? Why might you care about this again? What could we do with it? And for me, I think there's a couple of immediate takeaways. Is one, you could use this scripting yourself if you like to do digital photography. EXIF tool, I'm sure you may have already heard of it, but it's a wonderful tool for managing the metadata there. Another thing you could do is create privacy tools. So again, there's obsession about data and about encoding everything, but what about kind of pushing back against that tide? Why not create tools that actually purge this? And so EXIF tool is a great way to do that. You can actually overwrite any of the EXIF data in an image by just doing -all equals empty and then the file. And so that's actually what I did for another headshot that I uploaded to some other platform, because I'm not sure, or I don't want to necessarily allow other platforms to start now building models about my person based on whatever camera I used, etc. So that's all I have. So thank you for listening and sticking through. I'm going to stop my screen share so we don't descend into an infinite regress, which it seems like it did. And so here, we can I'll take a couple questions to fill the time out. I think Court was doing a wonderful job of keeping track, because if I tried to keep track of those questions, the talk would have gone even worse with every question.
Eli, it was great, thanks. And honestly, there was a whole lot of chat, but not a whole lot of questions being raised. So
great. Maybe
people were saving them for the end. Most of the chat centered around extracting or purging the data and like the implications of having all this metadata stored in social media sites and things like that. So thanks for touching on that at the end as well.
Certainly.
So folks, if anyone does have any questions, there are two different ways that you can ask. One, you could just drop a chat right in session. Drop your message directly in the session chat, and I will ask it for you. Or you could DM me if you prefer. Another option is just click the Ask to Share Audio Video link in the upper right, and that'll pop you up on this list, and I can click it, and you will be able to share and ask your question directly to Eli. So any questions?
And while we're queuing up questions, so one of the snippets is purging the metadata. And so again, this is just a very trivial example of, here's a Unix shell script, and here's how simple it is. And that should work on any file, so PDFs, images. Because that's kind of the first aha for me was, oh wait, you can do this. I'm going to remove all metadata from every file I ever produce and send. Now I just have to script it so that I don't have to remember to remove the metadata from every file that I'm sending.
Yeah, I have a question for you then. Do you know offhand, or have you looked into popular social media sites and all that kind of stuff, and which ones actually purge this information from images you upload?
That's a great question. I'd be curious, because I do see it as leaking personal detail, but part of me feels very cynical. And I guess I should suspend the cynicism, right? I can't make a judgment or an assessment about the engineering efforts or intent to a platform like Facebook. I have noticed the optimization and kind of resizing of images. So a good example maybe would be Gravatar. And actually, I might do that after this call, is look at my Gravatar image, because I think it was also an earlier version of a headshot that I had using the same camera. So I'm curious if maybe in the process of optimizing these images for web delivery, they're actually doing the right thing by privacy, which is stripping it of auxiliary data. But I think it's a great question. So if you all are on X social media, go ahead and try it. And I should note, with EXIF tool, you can embed your own metadata. So you can write tags to it. So you could write something like my privacy feature, something. So you could actually kind of test it yourself to see what sorts of things or if we could find, maybe, are there some canonical fields, or you could spoof the geodata. That actually might be the best way to see how social medias use it. So I saw Alex's comment about, I know what camera you use, I'm going to sell you an SD card. And you're right. Maybe spoofing geodata, if you're in a store, like spoof it to the location of, say, a Rite Aid, and then upload it and see if you get ads like for a Rite Aid or something. That might be fun. So.
Cool, thanks. Question from chat. What is the equivalent of stripping EXIF for the docx? Do we know what can be removed?
Yeah, that's a good question. So my understanding of the Office document formats is it actually doesn't use EXIF for its metadata. I think it has its own tagging notation. So that docprops core file we were exploring has a kind of other structure, but some of the keywords are significant. So there's overlap. The Word document will have things like keyword creator, modified on, created on, and it will encode those in that XML file, and it can be removed. So what you can do is, and I'll just jump back to sharing my screen here because it's a little easier if we just look at the actual file. So again, if we do, I'm just going to open. So another tool that I was looking at to make this a little more readable is XML lint. So we can see the structure all at once and creator modified by. So if I set these to an empty string.
Eli, you're not sharing screen at the moment.
Oh, alas, that was quite lame. So let's look. It looks like I can't. Let's try this again. All right. There we go. Sorry about that. There's nothing like listening to someone talk into thin virtual air as they describe their screen. So what I did, jumped back into the temp directory where we unpacked that manifesto document, and I used a tool called XML lint to format this or pretty print this, which is kind of an alternative to what we were using with the new shell. Is just, let's see all of this at once. And so you can see there's the various terms and other keywords. And so this uses another schema. So it's similar to EXIF data. And yes, we can remove it. So if I were to simply overwrite this value here, which is the contents of the DC:creator tag, remove them, save this file again, and then zip back together, you wouldn't have that data, or that wouldn't be in your document anymore. So yes, you can certainly strip it. Maybe EXIF tool does some of that. Not sure. That might be another thing to explore in the actual documentation.
Any other questions for Eli?